And back to Iran, the body responsible for choosing the next supreme leader has reached a decision, but the name has not been released. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in U.S.-Israeli strikes 8 days ago. Since then, there was speculation about who would replace him and how the process would unfold. The regime has only navigated the succession process once before, but unlike the managed transition that followed the death of Ayatollah Khomeini, this process comes amid not just full-blown war, but an economic crisis, water shortages, and in the wake of anti-government protests and a brutal crackdown. For more, I'm joined by Oliver Farry from our International Affairs Desk. Hello to you, Oliver. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, there's no name being given as of yet, but sources within the regime itself, which were divulged to one of France 24's Tehran correspondents earlier, said the man will be the man cited by Satan, and in the parlance of the Islamic regime, that the Satan is the United States, and in this specific instance is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump did indeed mention Mujtaba Khamenei, who is the son of the late Supreme Leader, as the successor. Now, this name has been bruited about quite a bit over the last few days. The younger Khamenei, who's 56 years old, was not killed in last week's attack that killed his father and also his wife. Now, Israel, as recently as yesterday, said it believed he is still alive. Khamenei is someone who's got quite a lot of support within the Revolutionary Guards, of which he is a member himself. He had actually been suggested as a possible successor before his father's death, and apparently Ali Khamenei was actually opposed to the son's candidacy because he did not want to return to hereditary rule, which he feared might actually further erode the credibility of the mullahs in the eyes of the Iranian people. But it is looking quite likely that he will be there. He will be the successor, despite there is also some opposition within the regime to him as well, because he is not seen as having the credentials to succeed his father. He's not an Ayatollah. He's a Hujjat al-Islam, which is a lower-ranking scholar. However, his own father was not an Ayatollah either when he succeeded Ruhollah Khomeini in 1989, but they did change the law in order to allow that. They might do a similar thing here. An interesting thing, though, is that last week, on the very day that the war started, Bloomberg carried an investigation that alleged that Mujtaba Khamenei had a wide range of luxury property holdings across various European countries, including Spain, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Now, he's not named as the owner of any of these, but Bloomberg established that he was indeed basically the shadowy hand behind it. The person who is listed as the owner is Ali Ansari, who's an Iranian businessman who's a property magnate and who was sanctioned last October by the United Kingdom, has not yet been sanctioned by either the United States or the European Union. So this is a very unusual and rather unexpected development, particularly as the Khameneis they're suspected of having quite a lot of money in reserve, but they're certainly not people that have been known to lead lavish lifestyles on foot of that.
Oliver, I want to get your take on another development. We'll pivot to the United States. On Saturday, the first 6 U.S. troops killed in the war were brought home. Their remains arrived at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, a ceremony taking place in front of their families. President Donald Trump was there, First Lady Melania, Vice President J.D. Vance also joining top military officials observing the solemn event. Oliver, if we're looking at the human, the political, and the economic cost of this war for the United States, it seems like it's just going to increase.
It certainly will increase. The human cost, while there are 6 U.S. Soldiers died in friendly fire last weekend, I mean, that would be viewed like quite as a considerable sacrifice in the United States. It is, of course, dwarfed by the 1,332 dead in Iran as a result of this. However, it's the economic cost is significant. the think tank, the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, earlier this week estimated that the first 100 hours of the war, i.e. the first 4 days, cost the United States $3.7 billion. That's $890 million per day. Now that probably those costs will taper off as the war goes on, but particularly crucially there, most of these figures are unbudgeted. So eventually that is going to be passed on to the American taxpayer, in addition to things like growing inflation and increasing fuel costs as well. So the war is already unpopular. However, Donald Trump said that he was not going to start any new wars. That was a main plank of his campaign, but it remains to be seen whether that was actually a core belief of the MAGA movement. His base is certainly still holding, despite certain cracks within the wider MAGA and the wider Republican the Republican family, so to speak. So these are sort of things that probably will eventually further down the line harm the president and certainly the Republicans in the midterm elections. But there's very, very little accountability for anything the United States does in wartime. The accountability generally comes in the guise of long-term effects, and it's usually quite unpleasant blowback. Whether Donald Trump will actually face any punishment for his missteps on this is probably another thing, but it'll probably come in the guise of, perhaps if the Democrats manage to gain control of the House from next January on, that could be certainly uncomfortable for Donald Trump in the last 2 years of his tenure.
And Oliver, looking at the wider implications of this war, what are you seeing?
Well, China said yesterday, Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, said that the war should never have happened. China stands to be badly affected by this because it is the largest importer of Iranian oil, and there's a strong chance that will dry up very, very quickly. Rising oil prices are the most common effect. It's unlikely that anyone else is going to join the war on Iran's behalf. It's in nobody's interest to do that. Iran, however, is fairly resilient. It doesn't really have much to defend itself with, but it can defend itself by attacking, which it is doing quite ably with regard to its neighbours. It's in an asymmetrical conflict. This is its greatest weapon, and despite what Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said yesterday, in which he apologised to neighbouring countries for attacking them, we've seen that the attacks are actually still going on this morning in the Gulf Arab countries. So it's probably going to happen again, and it's going to continue. And Pezeshkian's also faced quite a lot of criticism from hardliners within the regime for doing that. And they have been saying that we need to get a new supreme leader named as quickly as possible to curtail the president's ambition. We might also see in 100 days' time, the World Cup is due to start, and Iran is one of the countries that will be taking part in that. So there's a strong likelihood that Iran will decide that can we actually go to a country that is at war with us? And it's an unprecedented situation, but there's a strong possibility that, one, Iran will not take part, or two, the United States might put pressure on FIFA to exclude them.
All right, Oliver. Thank you very much, Oliver Farry, from our International Affairs Desk. And